together, and those of us who've been labouring away in robotics for a long time, I can see some grey hairs in the room, you know what I mean. So we've got now, robotics has become a whole lot more accessible. I mean, it's accessible now to high school kids. We've got NXT technology, and National Instruments are pushing robotics in a big way. Yeah. We've got Turtlebots, we've got Ross, we've got Sebastian teaching AI to 100,000 people. All of this stuff is coming together in a way that I think robotics, we've been labouring the curve, it's been flat for ages, but I think we're really at a neat point. I think that the field is really going to take off. So the big question is, why another book? We got books, right? There's lots of good books already out there, still written by people in this room. And I mean, the flippant answer is because I could. And maybe I was turning 50 and it's a monument complex. This has been mentioned. Oh, I know this. This has been mentioned to me. People who know me know that I'm a generalist. I know a little bit about a lot of stuff. And so this book is a little bit about a lot of stuff. And what I'm trying to do is to cover all of robotics, which is remarkably hubristic, I guess, and in a way that's sufficiently deep. And so the real challenge here is, have I got this sort of breadth, depth thing right? Because robotics is really big, and just show a bit of computer vision as well, which is also a field that's about this big, right? And growing like crazy.
It's a subfield of robotics.
Once upon a time it was. But these guys are about sorry. But they got all uppity and started their own. We're among friends here. So
good one.
So I guess what I was trying to do was to cover all of robotics in a sufficient level of detail. And the metaphor that I discussed in the preface is, think of a tasting menu. Right? So a tasting menu is how you can experience a lot of pretty awesome tastes and flavors without having to cook it yourself. Yeah. Right? And so the book has got over 1,000 MATLAB examples. Most of them are just 1 or 2 lines of MATLAB. But with those 1 or 2 lines of MATLAB, you can compose a couple of quaternions, you can do D-star planning, you can do EKF slam, you can do a particle filter, you can model a camera, right through to quite complex examples like, hey, I want to put a perspective camera on a non-holonomic ground vehicle and visually servo it to a target. all of those things are in the book, so I provide a bunch of quite simple tools and hopefully teach people in the first few chapters enough to allow them to be able to compose these to solve not just the problems in the book, but their own problems as well. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish in the book, and I guess it's only in the reading that we find out how successful that's been. The book also is an opportunity for whimsy, and so there's a fair amount of whimsy in the book, which I think is can be allowed. And there's also quite a bit of historical stuff which Daniela alluded to. So the story of Descartes and the fly, is in there, and many others. When we talk today about landmark-based navigation, I think it's important to point out that the Phoenicians did this 4,000 years ago when they were sailing around the Mediterranean. It's not much new under the sun. And so the problem the Phoenicians faced, we face when we have a robot going around looking at landmarks. They didn't even have a compass that came 2,000 years ago. So I think it's useful to put elements of this backstory in, so there's a lot of whimsy in the little blue boxes that litter the book. So that's what I tried to do in the book. I'd be happy for feedback after people had a chance to read it. And there's some mistakes in there which I'm really sad about, but I'm making a list and it's on the website already. The ones that what I think his top typesetting guy, Armin, onto the case, and so Armin took my LaTeX manuscript, which I thought looked pretty flash, and then he turned it to this, and it looked brilliant. The other thing that Springer had is they have colour. And 550 years ago, Gutenberg printed a Bible in black and white. We still print our textbooks in black and white. And most of the other publishers only do black and white. I don't get this. The colour just adds so much. And again, people who know me know that I'm colorblind, and I guess they probably think that the color thing's a bit interesting. If you look at all the line drawings, they're all done in red, blue, and black, because I have trouble with this thing called green. But there's a whole chapter on color, which also I think is kind of unusual for a person who's colorblind. Color's important for robots. So no, Springer have been really brilliant. I need to thank Osama for writing a really generous foreword for my book. It means that the book starts with the words "Once upon a time," which I never expected, but I think it's kind of nice for a story. And the book is, in some ways, a story, a narrative. I need to thank Bruno and Osama for starting the Star series. And I had long discussions with him because the Star series is a Springer Tracts on Advanced Robotics. I said to him, this book is not advanced robotics. This book defines classical robotics. But they wouldn't say no, so I'm in the Star series. But I think of this particular issue, number 73, as the Springer Tracts on Accessible Robotics. So I redefined the acronym for this one. And they gave me a miserable volume number, 73. I mean, it's a really drab number. It's a prime number, which is interesting. It's a great number. And I looked up on Wikipedia today, it's a 21st prime number, so that's a bit more of an interesting number. So there we go. So Springer have been brilliant. Osama and Bruno have been brilliant. A number of people helped me a lot in the writing. Paul Newman hosted me for many weeks at Oxford, and it was a really great time for writing. And it was, I was at Oxford visiting the mobile robotics group, and I thought, problem with table of contents, no mobile robots. So now there is, and a lot of that's based on Paul's class notes, which are really awesome. Danielle also hosted me for some visits at MIT. One in particular, I'm thinking it was last year. Danielle was, as always, very gracious, and I was particularly focused that week. I think I was the guest from hell. But I got a lot of writing done, and it was great. So I apologize for that. I had a sort of an inner circle of people that I shared the manuscript with, and you know, there's a funny thing, a book is an intensely personal thing, and at some point it's got to go out to the wider world. So I launched it here amongst friends, but eventually it's going to go much further. So Daniela and Paul and Cedric read big chunks of early drafts and gave me wonderful feedback. In the dedication to the book, one of the dedications to Lou Paul. I spent a brilliant 9 months at Grasslab when I was a very young person. Lou was incredibly gracious and inviting. And I didn't have a PhD, I was just this random guy from Australia, but he wrote to me and said, please come. And I did, and I think he's the guy who really turned me onto robotics. It would be nice if he could be here tonight. I invited him, but he had some other plans. He lives not far from San Francisco at the moment. So he was very influential to me. Yeah. My family have been remarkably supportive and indulgent in this process. Writing a book took a lot of my time. So my wife Philippa, my two daughters Lucy and Madeline were just brilliant and gave me enough time to do it. When I originally had the idea of writing the book, I said to Philippa, we should just go and rent a farmhouse in France or Paris and I could write all day. She said, what would I do? Which is actually a very good question. And it goes back to this kind of bad focus that I mentioned earlier. And so we rented an apartment in Paris, and a lot of the material was written there. So I couldn't have done it without their support. Finally, I would really like to thank Daniela and Osama for turning on this event tonight. To share this with friends is absolutely wonderful. And thanks everybody for coming tonight. Thank you.